options to cover the welt cord with fabric. You could cut it on a straight, which is what this is, 2-inch piece of fabric cut along the straight grain of the fabric. The challenges are, with this, especially with this stripe, it's not as pliable, doesn't have a lot of stretch. And when you're stitching it to the pillow, it can be really difficult to align these stripes just right when you're stitching the welt cord to the front and the back of the pillow. Or we could do a bias cut strip, and that's on a 45-degree angle, and it has much more stretch and pliability. This one has been done in a contrast fabric, which would also look good, and you can see it's much more pliable than the straight edge cut was. For this project, I'll be making an 18-inch square pillow with a bias cut self-weld, which means a 2-inch strip of fabric on the bias in the same fabric as the body of the pillow. Let's consider the layout. Bias cuts can eat up a lot of the fabric. So we know we can sandwich in a front of a pillow, the bias cuts, and the back of a pillow. I'm going to measure that out now. So for the 18-inch pillow, I'm going to use 3/4-inch seam allowances because that's what I use in my workroom when I'm welting a pillow. So my cuts are going to be 19.5 by 19.5. We want to make sure that this is a straight edge. So that's at 4, and it's at 4. Pieces are ready, and I've got my 2-inch bias cut for the welt cord. Front and back have been cut, centers marked, corners tapered, and even though the taper cuts off some of that stripe, I prefer that over the pointy dog ears. I like to put my welt cord in a setup like this so that it can spool off the top nice and smoothly when it goes to the machine, rather than laying flat on the ground and pulling it out where it can kink. I'll be using a 1/4-inch welt cord foot. Although it's a little larger than the welt cord, this extra room allows the fabric to feed through nicely. As I'm putting the welt cord under the presser foot, I want to make sure that the cord is all the way into that fold and both edges are even. So if you're comfortable with this and you want to move a little faster, you can change the stitch length to a longer stitch, a basting stitch. This doesn't have to be very secure because then it's going to be put into another seam that is secure. And I also don't need to backstitch. So in this case, it doesn't matter which is the front or the back because they're both the same. I'm just going to choose this one and apply the welt cord to one side. If you had two different fabrics or one was a definite front, you'd want to apply the welt cord to the front of the pillow feet piece first. My 2-inch welt strip allows me to have a 3/4 inch seam allowance after I've covered the cord. So I can easily line up the edges and know that it's in the right place. I like to start near the bottom on the side, so when I join the ends, there's no bulk at the bottom that will interfere with the zipper. Leaving a generous tail and still basting, and we'll put the welt onto the face. When I get near the corner, even though it's tapered, I still want to have the welt cord follow that nicely. So at where the needle is going to go down and turn, I'm going to come in perpendicularly and make a relief cut in the welt so it can make that turn nicely. And when I'm close to the end, I want to stop here, remove this, I cut the ends with a 2-inch overlap because my welt strip was 2 inches. And that allows me to angle the one side to the other and stitch diagonally so there's not a lot of bulk at the seam line. Trim that to 1/4 inch, finger press the seam down, get it back in the machine, put the needle down, tug, and snip the cords so they butt together. I'm really pleased with how the corners turned out. They are nice and sharp, and I'm not concerned about the puckering because the welt strip was cut on the bias. I can easily smooth that out. Next step is to clean off the bottom, so off to the serger. I'm ready to put in the invisible zipper, and I need to change the welt cord foot off to a zipper foot. Lining up the front and the back, right sides together, edges even, I'll make a mark on the face, the zipper tape, both sides, and the other side. Matching up the centers and the opposite side. We'll open the zipper and baste it in place so that I have complete control when I need to get close to the teeth. Lining up the markings for the second side. Now I'm changing from a basting stitch to a more secure stitch. And I'm getting really close to the teeth without stitching over them. Starting at the same place where I started the basting at the markings, and I'm going to back stitch to secure this. Opening up the teeth with my right hand so that I can get as close as I can without stitching over the teeth. Stopping at my marks and back stitching again. For the front edge where the welt is, this can be a little difficult. Starting at the markings where the basting was, open up the teeth so that it lays almost on top of the welt. Let's open this up and check it out. Great, it's not too tight. I like the way it looks. The last step is to sew all the edges closed, but before I do, I want to unzip this part way so that I don't sew the pillow entirely shut. Let's get this oriented where the welt cord side is on top and I can see the stitching so that I can get in maybe a little bit closer. Lining up all the corners and the edges, and I'm changing to the welt cord foot. From here, I want to pull the tails out a little bit so they don't get caught in the seam and they end up on the outside of the pillow. Coming up to the corner, I want to make sure I make a nice sharp turn, but keeping inside the previous stitching while I'm doing that. Once I turn the corner, I'm going to open this up to make sure that all my stripes are lining up. And hold this top at the center and stitch. Stop and do the next corner. And before I cut the excess here, I'm going to stitch over the teeth, creating a stop so that the pole can't be pulled through, and I'm going to clip the extra. And the next step is to serge the edges. So in turning the pillow cover right side out, I'm going to fold the corners in and really pinch them and pull them out on each corner. So this is ready for stuffing. And for this pillow, I'm using a 19 by 19 inch form, which is 1 inch larger than the cover. It's a micro gel, or also a synthetic down, and it's already plumped, and it's a little firmer than the down, so it's going to take a little more effort to get it into the pillow. You really want to squish this down and fold it in half, get some of that air out. Open this up and really put it in there, and grab each corner on the inside and push it into the corner of the cover to fill that out. I pressed all the seam allowances to one side so that the welt cord lays flat. I'm really pleased with how the zipper turned out. Writing the teeth along the top edge of the welt cord really helps to get a nice closed zipper seam. It almost looks invisible.